Hey, y'all need a break. Listen to these stories from r/EntitledPeople. Karen demands we let her through a fatal crime scene. Okay, so, I'll start by saying this story is from about 5 years ago, and my therapist mentioned it in passing as it was something I had spoken with her about years ago, regarding my PTSD. I figured it's finally time to post this gem of a woman's story. It's around 11 p.m. on a Saturday night and I'm sitting at home, just getting ready to go to bed. I'm an on-call tow truck operator and figure I'll be going out early the next morning. Right as my head hit the pillow, my Nextel-style two-way radio chirped and a dispatcher goes, "Hey OP, are you still awake?" "Yeah, I'm up." "Good, we've got a one-car accident in the next town over, PD wants it expedited so please hurry but be safe." 10:04 I'm out the door. After a roughly 20-minute drive I'm headed out of this small town looking for the accident and I see it, the coroner and forensics vans parked in the road amongst a dozen squad cars. A typical one-car accident has one officer sitting with it for paperwork reasons with the tow operator. Obviously I know things just got a lot darker than I had originally been told. Sparing the gory details, what had happened was, 6 kids between 17 and 20 had been in an SUV while driving drunk and only the driver had a seatbelt on. The vehicle swerved off the road and the driver went to correct, however 1. He overcorrected and 2. The road on that side had about an 8-inch lip which made it extremely rough of a transition to pull a vehicle back on the road. As it came back on the road the driver fishtailed, trying to correct back in the other direction and again overcorrecting. This sent the vehicle rolling down the road in and out of the 4-foot drainage ditch next to the road. All 5 passengers were ejected and died on the scene. One of the passengers was trapped under the SUV that came to a rest in the drainage ditch on its roof. The other passengers were strewn across the roadway with sheets over them. I set up my Peterbilt rollback at a 70-degree angle across this 2-lane road and start to work with forensics/the coroner to remove the vehicle from the ditch, as well as preserve as much evidence as possible. No sooner than I get this winch tight on my truck do I hear frantic beeping of a car horn. I turn around and directly behind me is a woman who looks to be in her early 40s, who is now just holding the horn down letting it blare non-stop as she's yelling out of her window. I ignore her and turn around to go back to this delicate job I'm in the middle of, wondering how Karen had gotten past the police roadblock that was roughly a third of a mile up the road at the nearest intersection to keep traffic out of the area. As I'm slowly maneuvering this 8,000-pound vehicle from the roof onto its side, the honking stops. Maybe 8 seconds later I feel a hand grab my shoulder and attempt to spin me around. I'm 6'3", 280 pounds, so there is absolutely no way this 40-something, 5'4"-ish 160 pounds woman is achieving this goal. I let out a sigh as I stopped winching on the vehicle and looked at the sky with my eyes asking every god I can think of for the strength to not headbutt this witch. I turn around and attempt to say, "Ma'am, the road is closed due to a fatal accident." Karen, cutting me off, "I don't care what you have to say, just get out of my way, I'm late." Me, extremely annoyed now and talking over Karen's continued complaints. "Listen witch, 5 people just effing died here and there is absolutely no way anyone is driving down this road for hours. I suggest turning around and driving back through the police roadblock you somehow got around, now." Karen, opening with that line that we've all heard 1,000 times. "Excuse me. I live right there," points back behind her vehicle, "and I have to use this road to get to where I am going. You will move your truck now or I'm calling the police." By this time the forensics crew has heard all the yelling over the loudness of my truck idled up and the PTO engaged and walked over. Forensics crews do not dress like police, especially in the middle of the night on the weekends. They're dressed in plain clothes but carrying a badge on them and they'll put on a hazmat-style suit if needed. None were needed on this scene, just gloves and such. "Karen, which one of you is the manager? This man won't move his goddamn truck and let me through, I'm calling the police." Is actually holding the phone to the side of her head and talking to what we would later find out was 911. Forensic officer, "Ma'am, I'm the police and I don't know." Karen, "I don't want to hear any more goddamn excuses, move the effing truck now." Clapping between each word. "Me, you, dumb witch, do your 2 remaining brain cells constantly compete for 3rd place." Forensics officer, stifling a chuckle, "Ma'am, if you don't get in your car and leave this crime scene now, you will be arrested." Just as the FO finished saying this, a squad car came screaming down the road from the same direction Karen came from, and stopped behind her vehicle. The officer hopped out of his car and the very first words he said were Karen's Miranda rights. Karen screamed, kicked, swore that everyone else should be arrested and even tried to spit on me, which caused her to catch a tampering with evidence charge as we're on an active crime scene. By the time it was all done, her other charges were obstruction, assault on an officer, misuse of 911, interfering with an investigation. She took a deal that netted her 18 weekends in the county jail. However, I did tow her car as well. Monday morning I met her husband and he couldn't have been more embarrassed, as he apologized over and over as he paid me, and then inspected the vehicle and signed off we didn't damage it. The impound cost roughly $600 as it was police initiated, after hours and storage. Charges were $150 impound, $50 after hours, $52 a day storage and $5 a mile each direction from our office. Our office was roughly 15 to 17 miles from there. Karen rips off my headscarf, wants me arrested for assault, attempts to pepper spray a cop. So this was back in college, at the local Walmart that is known for always being interesting. I have so many stories from this place. I swear this Walmart is like a Karen beacon. This story is a bit chaotic. I tried to write it as clearly as I can, but a lot was happening all at once, and while the memory is vivid, it is also quite mashed together. Some relevant info. I'm pale, and at the time walked with a cane. I have a condition where my heart rate can get too high and my blood pressure can drop and I can pass out, from standing too long usually, but anxiety can bring on episodes too. I wear a headscarf on holidays and special occasions. Now there are many types and styles of headscarves. On this day I was wearing it in a style where it completely covered my head and then draped around my neck, and was secured with pins. I use dressmaking pins. They're not very visible in the scarf, but they do not have anything covering their pointy ends. I make sure I place them so they will hold the fabric in place and not stick me. Since it is a holiday, I am also wearing traditional clothing, a long skirt, a white shirt with some embroidery on it, and a fabric belt. This also happened right after the 2016 election. My college town went from 1 Nazi group to 3, literally overnight. They would come onto campus a lot to harass us. The racists were very emboldened at that time. This was maybe a few weeks after, where stuff had calmed down a bit, but it was still pretty bad. I made the mistake of going to Walmart alone, in traditional clothing. So I'm going around the Walmart, picking up a few things. My backpack is in the front of the cart so I don't have extra weight on me. I'm standing at one of those aisle ends. I was trying to find something and had to look up where it was on my phone. Out of nowhere, my headscarf is ripped off of my head as someone behind me yells, "Terrorist witch." Luckily the scarf only had the end around my neck, so it pulled on my neck but didn't full-on choke me. Still, this definitely activated my fight or flight response. The woman, Karen, then starts screaming as I turn around. Apparently one of the pins had stuck her when she ripped my scarf off. She is screaming that I'm a terrorist, I assaulted her, she wants the manager and the police called, etc. This couple had been down the aisle and saw it happen and ran over. The woman, NW, kinda threw her sweatshirt on my head and got between me and Karen. I was panicking at first but realized she was trying to help cover my head, and the man with her, NM, had also gotten between us and was yelling at the Karen. The NM grabbed my scarf back and handed it to NW, who handed it to me, and she took her sweatshirt and held it up around my head to sort of block people's view of my head while I tried to get my scarf back on. The Karen is still screaming that she wants the police to arrest me for being a terrorist, for assaulting her, and how dare he. She is digging through her purse to find pepper spray because she wants to spray me and the man. I honestly didn't even wrap my scarf properly. I wanted to get out of there as fast as possible. A nearby employee had come out of an aisle to see what was happening and ran off, to get the manager I'm assuming. The NM is yelling back at Karen and had confiscated the pepper spray from her. Karen is screaming that I'm a traitor to my own race, along with her earlier insults, and is demanding that the NM pin me to the floor so she can pepper spray me and do a citizen's arrest, and keep me there until the police and FBI arrived, since she is adamant I'm a terrorist. So at this point, I'm shaking and crying, my heart rate is extremely high, and I know I need to leave or I'm going to pass out. The NW asked if I wanted to leave. I nodded. She grabbed my backpack and the arm that I'm not holding the cane in, and she quickly walks me down the aisle and out of the store. We just left my cart where it was. She asked where my car was and I tried explaining that I'm a college student and have to wait for the bus, but I'm coughing and trying to breathe, as my heart rate is well over 180 at this point. NW sees this and explains that she is a nurse, and I'm clearly not okay, and asks my medical condition and what I need. I explained what it is, and that I need to sit or lay down cause I'm gonna pass out. She offered me to sit in their van, which usually would obviously be a no, but we are standing in the middle of a parking lot and I'm about to pass out, and currently my brain is not getting very much oxygen. She opens this side door and I sit on the edge of the car and promptly faint. I wake up a few minutes later and she's holding my wrist in one hand, checking my pulse and looking at her watch. I mumble something so she knows I'm awake and she just keeps telling me it's okay, I'm doing fine. After I recover a bit, I sit up and realize NM is standing outside the car. I think he was trying to give me privacy. I asked for the Gatorade from my backpack and sip on that, helps with the fainting, while he explains what was going down. He says that the manager showed up with store security and he explained, over Karen screaming, what happened, and handed her pepper spray to the security guy, and that the police had been called. I look over and sure enough, there's cop cars pulled to the front of the store. NM asked if I had been hurt, if I wanted to talk to the police. Honestly, I'm scared of cops and just wanted to go home. So I declined to talk to the police or press charges. The NM went back inside to talk to the police a bit more and I tried to fix my scarf a little better. I had lost a few pins through all this, which was kind of annoying, so I couldn't wrap it how it was earlier. The NW told me my heart rate had been around 200 when I passed out, and luckily it had come down again quickly because she had considered calling an ambulance. She lets me know NM is texting her, and reads out to me what is going down back in the store. As it turns out, I didn't need to press charges. Karen was so infuriated that NM would help a terrorist witch to get away, she got a bit aggressive. She was yelling at the manager, security, and the police officers when NM came back in. When she saw him, she rips out her pepper spray. Apparently they were dumb enough to give it back to her, and is screaming at him. Cop grabs her arm to stop her. She tries to pepper spray the cop, gets taken down and cuffed. NW is positively gleeful as she tells me about Karen getting tackled. Apparently then Karen started screaming about suing the cops, getting the FBI involved, the classic Karen stuff. I didn't get to see Karen get taken off to jail sadly. My bus pulled up and the NW helped me over to it. Since then, I refuse to go by myself to any store if I am wearing a headscarf, even though I live in a different area now. Entitled parents and sister are demanding I not take an incredible job overseas if I'm taking my adoptive daughter. Sharing my post from Am I the A-hole, as I think some of you will like this revised post as title had an error in it. My younger sister went through a pretty rough time as a young adult, drinking and doing drugs and generally being wild. She ended up getting pregnant and giving birth at age 18 when I was just a few weeks away from turning 21. She did not want the child after giving birth. She refused to even pick up the child and would leave her sitting in dirty nappies. Despite never wanting children myself either, I stepped in and adopted my newborn niece as my daughter. My then boyfriend, who I'd been with for 3 years, gave me an ultimatum, him or her, as he didn't want children either. I picked her and he left me, which resulted in me suddenly being a single mother. The first few years were rough as a single parent, barely making ends meet, but I managed, and my sister had nothing to do with us. I never once hid the truth from my daughter that she was adopted, but always assured her I loved her so much and was her mummy. When my daughter was 6, my sister was finally clean and wanted to have access to her. I allowed it but stressed she would just be an aunt to her, and she accepted this, though it's clear she struggled with the concept, and sometimes acted more like a mother, which I always squashed quickly. Now my daughter is 8 and I've been offered a job in a different country. The pay is almost double my current salary and the company is helping us find a home, putting my daughter in an international school and after-school care, so of course I'm going to take it. But this resulted in my family having a meltdown about how I can't do this, and how it's cruel to take my daughter away from her family, and how it's not fair to my sister. My sister has told me she won't allow me move away with her, and that she'll fight in court to get my daughter back. I've talked to lawyers, and it seems she doesn't have a leg to stand on, as my daughter is legally my daughter, but the rest of my family is telling me I'm being extremely cruel, and if I cared about my sister, I'd turn this job down. I left home at 16 and finished my education. My sister, meanwhile, is the golden child who gets away with everything. She even now lives with our parents and doesn't work. My daughter, while sad to be leaving her school and friends, is excited for the move. I've been teaching her about the country every night before bed, and we've gone to some authentic restaurants to try food from there. I've also promised her we'll fly back at least once a year to visit, and she can FaceTime/call her friends. I feel like my family are angling for me to eventually just hand my daughter back over, as if I was just a temporary filler for my sister, which will obviously never happen, and my lawyers are involved in this matter. Karen rages when I snatch her phone after she was filming a dying woman. A few years ago I was on a flight from London to Sydney when an older woman, maybe 70, suddenly collapsed in the aisle. The flight attendants rush over to her and check her pulse, and determine she doesn't have one, and commence CPR. People are standing up to see what is happening, and a few people start to film. At this point, the flight crew have brought out a defibrillator and have had to remove the dying woman's shirt to use it on her. Myself and a few other people tried to stand around them to block the view and give the poor woman some dignity in this horrible moment. The flight crew are naturally panicking, but remaining professional. One flight attendant is asking people to stop filming, but they don't. The closest person to me was Karen, and she had her phone moving at all angles to try and get some footage of the poor woman on the floor. I snatched her phone out of her hands and called her a disrespectful C, and she instantly started screeching that I had stolen her phone. The flight attendants weren't paying attention to what she was saying, as they clearly had more important things to focus on. She then grabbed a flight attendant who was assisting with first aid by the arm and told them I had stolen her phone. I didn't want to cause more drama for the poor flight attendant who was so flustered, so I threw her phone down on her seat. The lady collapsed shortly before we landed, so once we had landed, we all had to wait on the plane while ambulance crew boarded and commended CPR, and eventually took her off the flight. While we were waiting, Karen said, "Can we get off the plane? I want to go home. I've had a long flight and I'm tired." Luckily for me, someone else was sick of her bullcrap because they told her to shove her complaints up her butt. I wish I'd thrown her phone out of the plane if I could've. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.